Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to build a simple application which is about conferences. So we're building an application for a conference. So let's say, let's have this. So we have a big conference like this, and we have someone here. Let's say there's somebody who will be registering people that will be attending the conferences. So let's say we have person one, let's give it a different color. Let's say blue. Person one, person two, and person three. Let's say like that. And these three people are attending the conferences. And this is our, let's say, and this is the manager, right? So this is the manager. And he is the one going to be registering these people. Now, the other thing that we want to add to this particular conference app is that anytime somebody registers, we want to assign a number to that person. So let's say, for example, in this case, when person A registers, we want to assign a number of, let's make it quite big, number of one. So we assign a number of one. Same thing here for two, then for three. This one seems quite small. Uh, let me change this once again. So the number will keep on going to 10. So the limit should be 10. So when 10 people registers, then we start numbering again for the next set. So if we have another group of people that comes in and we've already registered uh, 10 people, let me get this other blue here. Sorry. So we've registered 10 people. The next person that comes in, we are going to start numbering again. So in this case, they are going to be 1, then moves on to 10. So we are numbering people in groups of 10. So at the end of it, all ones will be in one group, all twos will be in one group, all threes will be in one group, fours, 5 till 10. So we are grouping people for the conference. Another feature that I want to also add is the person has to pay before they can be registered into the system. So they pay upfront based on whatever criteria. Let's say they're paying per a certain amount and they're going to be registered into the system. So we also want to capture that plus their basic information. So let's write down the kind of stuff that we actually want to capture. So first we want to gather, let me make it black. For much clarity, make it bold, make it a bit bigger. So we want to capture the name of the person, the age is very, very important. Also, we want to capture the address, where the person is coming from, which area are they coming from, very far away, close by. We want to capture that one. The telephone, the email in case of emergencies, if you want to contact them later on. So you want to capture these basic informations. And let's keep it simple for now. So we want to capture just this simple information about the user. Then the second part of it is the payment. So the amount that the person has paid, the payment amount, and I also want to add a status to the payment because for the amounts, probably so there will be a set amount. So let's say the person has to pay, I don't know, 20. So any units, any currency that I want to put there, dollars, whatever, it doesn't really matter. So the amount over that, let me just do it this way. So whatever amount over, let's say 20, I don't know. So the amount that they've paid, and we want to know the status of the payment, whether it is partial or full or a pledge. There might be certain cases where the person might not be able to pay upfront. but the person has pledged to pay it, so we can have that one too as well. And due to that, that's why we have the person's phone number and email to contact them for the payment. Very, very, very important. So we have these two also for the payment information. So we want to capture this basic information for our conference application. Very, very simple. And let's get started. Okay, so I've already gone ahead and set up a simple Vite React project using this command, yarn create dot. The template is React TS because you're going to use TypeScript. Now the dot here is simply I've already created a folder, calling it a conference, and just put moving into that directory and running this command with the dot will create all the packages and everything inside the folder. So you don't really have to specify the folder name anymore. So once we are done, we can just run our installation. So we're going to run all our installations. All right, so installation is done. So we're going to run our dev. Let's open this in the browser. And here we go. We have our Vite application where everything is running as expected. That's great. Okay, so we want to get started. And from looking at the diagram that we have, a very simple diagram, and we can see that we only need one single person. So there's no need to have an authentication system. So just only one person that is going to be using the application. All right, so we're just going to jump right in. Let's open up what's this thing, app.tsx. Personally, we don't need anything inside this one, so we're just gonna clear everything. Same for here. Let's clear this one, and let's clear this one. We don't need a state right now. I guess we need a state. Also, no styling, not going to be worrying ourselves with styling. Let's say, yeah, conference. Let's call this conference. Let's also, let's check if everything is running. Right. Okay, so we have conference, and then we get rid of, so we have main.tsx, no styling. Thank you. Let's clear off these extra files. We don't need them for now. All right. We're going to app.tsx. So that's where our starting point is. So the first things first, we need a form to capture let's say, this basic information that we have here. So we are registering this person. All right, so we need to create a form. Let's get rid of that. So let's create a form. So we have form for actions. You can get rid of that. Let's create a label. So we have a label. The first one we need is the name of the person. So we need the name. Let's create this name and have an input here, which is going to be a text and name. So you just give it a name and an ID. Let's hope that this one comes in. All right, so we have our name. Good. The next thing that we need is let's put this side by side actually. Okay, so we need the name. Get rid of this one. So from our diagram, we need the age, address, telephone, and email. The age, can also put the date of birth, but for now, let's just keep it simple. So we need a label for the age. Let's give it a age. The input would be a number because ages are in numbers. So we have age. Let's have the next label being the address, right? The address. Have the address. The input. Address can have the address can have multiple lines. So let's make it a text area. Instead, we have address, address. Ignore the columns and rows for now. It's not necessary. Okay, TypeScript is complaining. It needs to be a number, so we can just get rid of this one. So let's save that, and we have that. Okay, so we have address, age, and then the name. The next one is telephone and email. Let's have it be label. Let's see, telephone first. Let's make it a telephone. It's gonna be an input of a text, because telephone can start off with different stuff. Telephone. The next one will be email. So email. Let's call this email, and the input will be of the email format. Want it to be a correct email. So we have all our fields. It looks terrible. So let's put some. You can put divs around it. So let's see. Let's put div here. Yep, that one. Put a div, another div here. Let's have a div here. Let's have another div. Okay, this repetitive stuff. Well, this is loading. Okay, so we have all the basic inputs. Okay, so we have the next one we need to add is account and then status. So, but status will have three options: partial, full, or a pledge. Okay, so first and foremost, let's have our amount. We have amounts or the payment, and this is going to be an input of a number. It has to be a number, cannot be anything else. We have that. Let's have a div. We have a label, and then this is status. Yeah, status. Yeah, status. Okay, or payment status. So let's give it a select field. So we have status. Let's send status. Give it an ID of status. It has its option. So the first option is going to be full. Let's say it's full. Let's create a full payment. The next option will be partial. Let's say a partial payment. And the next option, or the last option, will be a pledge. Sorry, pledge. Okay, so we have that. So we have full payment, partial, then pledge. Awesome. So we have our form ready. So now we can enter in some values. So person says 120, this 162 years. They can enter his address. Telephone, it can be a telephone. So we have our fields: the name, age, address, phone, email, amount, and then status. But currently we can't do anything with this, just input values, but we can't store it anywhere. So we need to find a way to grab all this information that the manager would be entering and then storing it somewhere. So we can put it into state, or better yet, we can use, so instead of handling it ourselves, we're going to use Formic. Okay, so we're going to use Formic to handle our forms. And the reason why I'm using Formic is pretty simple. So Formic is very good for handling forms. Anything that deals with forms, you can was definitely used in React. It can also be used inside React Native. And the reason why I'm using Formic other than other libraries, because I like using Formic. It makes it very, very simple for me to use. All right. So let's install Formic. Let's open up a new, just do yarn add Formic. And I think it already comes with this TypeScript type, so there's no need for us to be installing the types for it too. So to use Formic, we just let's import it from use Formic. That's it, and that's that. So we have form, then go to use Formic. Oops. Now this one takes in an object. So you set a hook, and we need the initial values as well as the on submit. So on submit a callback function. Okay, so uh, so what are the initial values that we're going to be providing? So we're going to provide all these values, the initial values for it. And yeah, so let's have the first one be the name. It's going to have an empty string. The age is going to start off at 0. Probably you can have some, simple age. Maybe the minimum age for entering the conference is probably 18 years or something. I don't know. But yeah, you can set the age here. The next one is the address. Obviously, it's going to be an empty string. We don't know what address we're going to put in there. The telephone is the next step. So we have a telephone of nothing, empty string. The next one we're going to have is the email, the amount, and the status. We're going to email being an empty string. The amount that's going to be entered is also 0. And the status is going to be partial. Just they're setting the value is partial, so we are setting as partial because you don't know if the person has paid it or not. This arrow thing here is very annoying. Let's get rid of that. All right, whatever. Okay, let's just put return. That's all. Yeah. So we have form, so we can then connect the formic with the form values. So let's pass in the first value will be form.values.name. And since using TypeScript, we're able to get a nice intelligence with our values. Same goes for age, is form.values.age. We have that address. We have value is form.values.address. Obviously, we need that. And we have this one. Oops. We have form.values.telephone. Here's telephone. Here is form.values.email. We need email. And the amount. We have the value of form.values and the amount. Great. Now we come to the status. Over here we have a value, so it's form.values.status. Okay, so we've connected the values. When you save that, you can see that the values has changed over in our form. But right now, nothing happens. When we try to change anything, nothing is happening. Why? Because we've not connected the event handler to the unchanged events that's supposed to handle the user input. So right now I keep typing, but there's nothing being shown up in the form. So to do that, we can use with formic, we simply just pass in the form.handle change. Now, the other cool thing about formic is that once you set the name property on any of the input fields, it will connect that value directly, the name, sorry, The property that you've set, the value of name, will be connected to the value inside the form. So in this case, we have name over here. So once we type in, you can see that it's only affecting the name field. If we, let's say, change this to, let's say, age, and we go in to type in, you can see that age clears away from 8 into nothing, but name stays the same. So the name property is very, very important for formatting. And you have to always be careful of the field that you're assigning it to. So let's quickly add this one um, to the other fields. Oops. We have that. We have this one. Have this one. Same goes for the amount and status. Even on select fields, it works. So we can select full payment, give this an amount of, let's say, 78. The email, we can provide it for an email and all that. So now we've connected Formic with our form. We need a way to, we need a button to save our form. So we're going all the way down here, all the way to the bottom, and add a form, a button actually, a button with the submit type. And we're gonna go, let's say register. So we have the register. Now this one with the type submit, it will automatically connect it, with the form. So if once you've entered in all your values, you can hit enter anywhere, and then any validations that is supposed to check, it will perform that check and then send that values on to wherever it's supposed to be submitted. But now we haven't actually connected the form with the submit event from this particular form. So we need to do that. So we have the on submit. So this one will be called when the button is clicked. So I want to connect it with the form.handle submit. So I want to handle that. So once the submit event is called, we want Formic to be handling that event for us. Okay. So what do we do? So once let's give it a nice email, something like this, and we click on register. As you can see, nothing is happening. But what's happening behind the scenes is this particular function is being called with new values that the user has inputted. So these values are coming in from this particular field. But there's a few things that we want to be cautious of when dealing with forms, that in this particular use case, or in this app that we are building, some fields are required, and we do not want to submit this form if those fields have not been inputted. There, it has no values. One of them is the name, the age, the address is very, very important. The telephone, email can be optional because it might be possible that not everybody at the conference might have an email. So we're just going to have the telephone, which almost everybody in the world has. So email is important. Now for the amount, it would have been important, would have been required if there was no pledge, meaning that the person should have paid something. But because of the pledge, this amount is not required. But this is definitely required. The person must, the manager or the registrar or the secretary, or whoever is registering these people, must definitely set the status based on whether the person has paid the full amount or not. So let's add our required value. So let's add required. So we are setting this one to be required. And this one will, the browser will handle the required for us. It's going to check and ensure that all the fields are properly set. So the next one is the address. So required for the address. Telephone, definitely required. Oh, sorry. So you have telephone required, email not required because not everybody has an email. Amount not required, but select is definitely required. Another thing that we also have to that is good to have is to show which fields are required by indicating something inside the form. So in this case, or most of the times, you see that most forms has this kind of star at the end. So let's say in this case like this. So this star over here tells that this form is required. So we're going to have this star on all the fields that are required. So let's have this one over here. Oops. Same for the address, telephone, same too for the telephone. Not for the email, not for the amount, but status is definitely needed. So we have these fields. Very nice. Okay. Let's make the form a little bit cleaner by just moving the forms to the next line. And we can simply do that by just doing a BL. That's it. We're just gonna add that to this one. Press, telephone, email, amount, and finally status. So to move them to the next line, and that is all. You're not looking to style any of these fields. It's not necessary. It's not important in this particular video. Okay. So let's actually see these values being shown up here. So let's console our values. Let's open our console. Move it to the bottom. Let's go to the console. Oh, what's this? Just React stuff. Okay, so let's give it some good names. Let's say Thomas. Thomas Edison. I don't know if this is the right name or not. 87 address PM. I don't know. Block. The telephone of let's say plus 78 something something something. So let's say for email, let's give it Thomas dot Edison at what Gmail, which is most common.com. The amount of, let's say the person is paying the full amount, which is 20. I don't know. I said the amount anywhere. And it's a full payment. And when we click on register, we can actually see all the values in there. Neatly packaged for us to use. Great. All right. Okay, so once we have these values, what is the next stage? We need to save the person's input and store it on the machine that the browser is on for now. Obviously, if you have a backend, you can just submit that to the backend and store that or all of that. But in this case, we just want to keep it inside the browser. The browser. Close this. We want to keep it inside the browser, and then at that point, we also want to assign, give a group number, just as what we have over here, to that person. So let's do that as well. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this library. So we're going to use this library local forage to store all the data inside the browser. Now, what local forage is simply just like local storage, but it uses the IndexedDB, which comes with modern browsers. And IndexedDB is a storage, local storage that you can use to store a lot of data compared to the local storage API or the local storage that comes with the browsers. So we're going to use this library, local forage, and it works just like how the API is just like how local storage is. So you don't really have anything to worry about, except that this one is a promise based, so you can use promises to do all sorts of stuff. So let's install that. Add local reach. Okay. So we have local forage installed. Let's import that. This one already comes with its TypeScript packages, so no need to install its types. We have that. Let's quickly get rid of. Let's add this to workspace. We have local forage nicely installed for us. Then we can simply just go here, local forage dot set item. So we want to set the item. It needs a key, so we need to give it a key and the value that we are passing in. And as you can see, this one can accept any kind of value, unlike local storage where it only accepts strings. Let's get rid of this thing. All right. Okay, but before we can actually store the values, we need to do some sort of manipulations with the data. So the first things first is we need to generate a group ID for the person. So we need to generate a group ID. And as you might have suspected, that local forage stores data most of the times, just like how local storage does, where the data will be replaced, replace any data in there based on the key that is provided here. So in order to ensure that the new person that we're adding is combines with existing people that have already been registered inside the person system, we first need to grab all the registered people, add that into the array or whatever data structure that we're going to use to store them, and then put that back into the local forage at that exact ID. So let's put down that to do append new participant. Let's call it a participant since they're participating in the conference. So append new participant to registered participants. So we have that. But before that, we need to generate a group ID for participants. So we need to generate a group ID. Now, how do we generate the group ID for the participants? To do that, we need to actually get all the existing participants, grab the last participant, check their ID if it's 10 or if it's 1 or if it's less than 10, we are going to increment it and assign that new ID for this newly registered participant. If it's more than 10 or if it's 10, then the next value will be 1 since it's just going around that. So to do that, let's grab all the participants. To do that, so we're going to do await on local forage get item. Then we're going to call this participants. And await, we are getting an error because this needs to be asynchronous. So just pass an asynchronous here. So we get all the participants. Obviously, it's unknown, so we can quickly fix that by providing the TypeScript definition for a participant. Okay, so let's add this TypeScript definition. So what is a participant? It has a name, an age, which is a number, an address, which is a string, important, telephone, which is, number, email, which is another string, amount, which is the payment, this is a number, and then status is going to be either partial, full, or pledge. The status can only be either of these three. Now, there are other things that we need to add to a participant, which is a group ID. There should be a number and a participant ID, which can be anything. Now, the participant ID that we are providing here is a uniquely generated ID that is, we are going to assign it to each and every single person. It is different from the group ID. So you can think of the participant ID as a database ID or an auto increment ID that you can use to do some queries and all other things. Right? So for this case, instead of it being a string, we are just going to let it be a number because we are just going to increment the previous number of the we are just going to increment the number of the previous participants and assign it to the current one. So these are the two extra stuff that has been added to a participant. So we grab that, we come over here and assign it to this one, and this is going to return it as an array of participants. And we can have our TypeScript definition. Great. So once we have our participants fetched from local forage, as you can see from the type definitions, can be an array of participants or null. Null means that there's no data in there, fresh information that we can now make use of. So let's handle both cases. So the first case we want to, which seems to be quite easy, is if there are no participants will be an empty value. So let's do if participant is equal to, let's say, null, or best yet, we can simply just do this. If there are no participants, what do we do? So if there are no participants, what we're going to do is, so we're going to bring in the group ID over here. So we're going to grab so there's a new group ID and the participant ID for this individual is 0 because there's no participant and it's a new person. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to grab participant data, which should be of the structure of a participant. And we are just going to spread out the values since most of it's the same, and then move the group ID in the participant ID over in there. Okay, we are missing one more thing. Yes, string for telephone. Wait, did I make a mistake with it? Oh, sorry. This one is supposed to be a string. All right. The other thing that we need to fix is the status, obviously. So the status has to be partial, full, and pledge. So in order to fix that, we simply just can we use the new satisfies participant? I guess it doesn't. Yes, missing these two things. Okay, so let's do omit. So we want to omit group ID and then the participant ID. Awesome. So now we are using the new operator satisfy, which is the latest version of TypeScript. So what it simply does is simply tells that this object that we've created over for the initial values should satisfy the structure of the participant, that we've declared over here. And this is especially useful for statuses. Sorry, not statuses, but for strings. In this case, we've actually defined this, the kind of string that it has to be, which is partial, full, pledge. But in this case, if we had not specified this satisfy, what TypeScript will say that this status that we're passing here is a string. So it does not know that this has to be of the structure. But once we've passed in the satisfy operator, we can actually tell TypeScript that yes, this status that we pass in here satisfies or is actually this of this nature partial full page, and all that. And that solves our little problem over here. So in order to get rid of this duplicate code, let's just do this because this one is just pure zeros. Okay, so we have our participant information right here. So the next thing that we want to do is once we have this participant, all we need to do is just call local for each or set item. And what item are we going to set it as? So we have this over here. We can store that in there and we bring it as an array and we bring in the participant data. So this one will store it into local for each. Now this is if there is no participant. Now, the next case that we want to handle is that there is actually a participant. But if we do continue to check this, move on from this if statement, it tries to keep telling us that this participant can either be an array or null. And why is that? This condition will run if there's no participant, but because we are not returning or breaking this condition to jump over, it simply just continues on to the next, what's it called, code. So in order to prevent that, we can simply just do return. So what it does is simply just once this is done, we are done with execution. So we just simply return. And when we check in the next case, we can actually see that participants actually is an array this time. So what do we do? In this case, what we want to do is we want to grab the last person that was added to the system. So in order to get the last participants, we can use the syntax over here. So we can get all the participants with their length, length -1. So what this one will do is it will grab the last participant of in the array. So we can just do that and say this is previous. Let's call it a registered participant like that. So we have a registered participant and this person should have a group ID and a participant ID. So what do? Simply just construct this same object again like this. And this time we just simply grab the registered participant, this participant ID +1. Oops. So we are incrementing that. Now the group ID should be registered participants, the group ID +1 modulus 10. Yes, you can actually do this. Now, what this one is doing is we are simply just grabbing the participant ID, the previous registered participants, we add 1 to it, and then we perform the modules of it. So if this person over here is actually 10, it's just going to move on to 0. Right, so that will cycle the group ID. I also noticed that I made a mistake over here. This one is supposed to be 1. And this one, there's a slight problem with this calculation that we're doing over here is if this registered group, if this group ID is 9, so let's say, so is 9 +1, this is going to give us a total of 10. But 10 modulus 10 is actually 0. But there shouldn't be any group ID of 0, but rather it should be 1. So in order to get this one, we simply just, at the end of it all, just simply, just add a value of 1. So even if this registered participant is, let's say it comes on to 10, 10 plus 1, this one will give us a total of 11, but that modulus of 10 will give us 1. Then 1 plus 1 will definitely give us a total of 2. So that means that if that person is 10 Oh, actually, there is a small. We actually need to perform this calculation a little bit differently than I expected. Instead of using the modules, we're actually going to calculate it differently. So the new group ID is the registered participant group ID plus one. So this one will be the new uh, let's call it calculated group ID. Calculated group ID, but the new group ID should rather be if the calculated group ID is equal to, let's say, 11, then it has to be 1. Else, we simply just assign it by the calculated group ID. So this one will keep on moving to 9 plus 1, which would be 10. So you have group of 10 and 10 plus 1. Yeah, so this one should work. And then we have the new group ID. Yeah, this should work. All right, good. And then we move on to just simply perform this. So local forage dot set item. So we can set item on the participants. This time we simply just participants concatenate with the new participant data. Oops. All right, that was a mouthful. So we can get rid of the last stuff and we can, do some checks over here. So what's happening is this. The first things first, we are grabbing all the participants and we are checking if there's any participants available or already registered. If there's none, we create a new participant with a group ID of 1, then the participant ID of 0, then we store that participant right away. Skip on. But if there are participants, what we're going to do is we're going to calculate the group ID or get the new group ID from the last participants registered by looking at the entire participants array, then putting that in there. So we can test this out. Let's see. Let's go back and enter the person's name of Thomas Edison. Let's say the age is 52. The address is PM block 256. The telephone will be +745865214. The email will be Thomas says 5 at yahoo.com. The amount they're paying is a full amount of 20, full payment, then register. You can see nothing is happening. You don't see anything happening, what went on or anything like that. But if we go on to the application, then we look for IndexedDB. So inside IndexedDB, we have local forage, and as you can see, we have this key value pair. So we have participants, and we can check to see we have the information of the participant stored in there. And as you can see, it has a group ID and there is a participant ID of 0. So it's starting off as 0. So if we go on to add the next participant, let's say this time will be Mary Mao. Mary Mao of, let's say, 45 street, spell street 375. And the number would be a plus 555 -789 that. And let's say Mary Mall at gmail.com. It's also paying exactly 20 and the full payment. And we register. If we refresh this, we can see that yes. So we have two people registered. So we have first one is Thomas. Then we have Mary Moore. Mary has a participant ID of 1 since it's implemented from Thomas's participant ID, and Mary is in group 2. Awesome. Okay, so that means we can keep on registering a lot of people. But first off, let's also clear this form when the registration is successful. But before we do that, let's clean up the code a little bit. So first things first, we want to clean up this section of the code if there are no participants. So let's create a function over here. Let's say, let's do this. So we need a function. Sorry. Uh, Register new participant. Let's bring that in here. As you can see, this one simply just does this. Let's grab that. Now, for the values over here, we can do a couple of stuff with it. We can pass the values inside to this function, or we can simply just do form.values. So, which is the exact same thing that is also passed on in here. So it's not necessary for us to actually pass the values over here. And in this case, we can actually ignore the return value. Then we bring that over here. Oops. Paste that in, clear all that, and clean up our code a little bit. So if there are no participants, register participants. But if there are participants, then we actually need to do this. Register new. So let's give this one a completely different name because register new participants is kind of sorry. So create new conference registration. Registration with participants. This is a this is a mouthful. Create new conference registration with participants. That is ridiculous. Let's just say create new registration. That's it. Yeah, create new registration with participants. Yeah, that's that. And for the next one, we simply just need register. Well, let's say register participant. I think that's yeah. All right, that's cool. Now we can grab all this and move it here. In this case, we need the participants. So what do? We just simply pass in here, pass in the TypeScript type. Get that, change these values to form. Oh, sorry. Form.values. We have that, and it's cool. All right. So we can simply just do this, register participants, and we can do this. All right, clean. And we can also return over here. And we can actually ignore this since we are not using that anymore, and we have a much cleaner code. All right. Now we also want to clear this form. So to do that, there are a couple of stuff we can do. Formic inside the onSubmit function provides some formic helpers. Let's call it formic helpers. So formic helpers has this function over here. It's called reset form. So reset form is simply just going to clear the form and set it back to the way it's supposed to be. But there's a little bit of an issue here. As you can see, once this is done, it will just quit out and this was never called. So in order to fix that, we can simply just do a return here and pass in an else statement here so that we can always ensure that this particular function is always called. Let's get that. All right. All right, cool. So once that is done, oh, another thing here is that for the set item, it returns a promise, and it's always a good idea to handle our promises. So let's return these promises and handle them here with our weight because it's very, very vital. Handling promises. So we have that. Let's check. Let's ensure that everything is working. So we have a new person. Let's say Yellen. Uh, who you? I don't know. I don't know if that's a good name or something. I don't. 20 years of age. Street 87N. The number will be plus 324. I don't know, 5. Sorry, 754 and 258. Pretty nice. Let's say we have Yellen. Let's have that. Sorry, like this. Oyo, gmail.com. Then let's say it's going to be a partial payment. Let's say we did that. Partial. Then we register. All right. We can also check to see if there's a new registration. Yep. And there is a new registration. So it shows that everything is in there. Let's move this here. All right, good. So we have Yellen Boyo added. So the participant's ID is 2. All right, great. Now we can actually register participants, and as you can see, the form actually closes. But there's a little bit of problem here is that concerning the amount. Let's say the amount the manager enters 5, but selects full payment. In this case, this will actually go through, which is not what we want. We actually want if you are setting the amount given to be, let's say, less than the amount provided, then the person has to actually ensure that we have set a partial payment. And also, if there's no value given to the amount, this has to be selected. Either a pledge has to be selected. So apart from those two conditions, everything goes. So let's add those conditions. To do that, let's give full payments amount. Let's say 20. Let's have full payments registration fee, rather. Yeah, registration fee. That's much better. So the registration fee is 20. Right. So we need to perform the check before any of these actually runs. So to do that, let's have a little bit of function. Check over here. Let's grab the values. All right. So we first want to check if values actually has an amount. So if values dot the amount, if there is no amount, then what we want to do is want to do a little bit of formic helpers dot set error failed. So we want to actually set an error for the amount stating for the amount and the status. Let's actually set that to the status actually, instead of it being the other field. So what error actually are we providing to this particular case right here. So if there's an error, let's say, sorry, actually this one, if there is no value and the values dot status actually is not, oops, I just went the wrong way, sorry. It's not partial, and what we need to do is should choose pledge when participant hasn't paid paid the registration fee. We have that. Now, if there's actually some amount, if the value amount is less than the registration fee, and the values the status is not equal, why is it saying partial? All right, it's not. Um. Oh, wait. This shouldn't be partial. Sorry. This should rather be pledge. What is this? This is another problem. This comparison appears to be unintentional because partial and pledge have no overlap. Yes, another big problem. All right, so what is happening here is the status. The object should have been okay, should have worked, but when we are using it in this case, it's actually detecting the status to be this field right here, but it's not checking it if it's for or a pledge, which is very, very worrisome. Let's see if we can actually try this one. Participants status. Yeah, that actually works. Okay, it's not a pledge. And if the registration fee, then it's not partial. Partial has not been selected. Then actually want to return with the formic helpers and set the field error. So in this case, we want it to be the status of should choose partial payment when participant has not paid the full amount. All right. So we have these two conditions running, and this should ensure that we actually do set the correct value. So let's see if we provide this name, let's say um Patrick, sorry, Patrick Star. Oops, not Star. And Patrick is, let's say, 34 years old. Address is uh, and Rock, not. It's gonna have a number of 999 and an email of Patrick at hotmail.com. So no amount is given, and they have selected full payment. Let's actually ensure that. Let's go back to our application. So we have 3 people. We want to ensure that there are no more participants added because of these conditions. So let's actually register. We reload. You can see that no participants was added, and therefore that means that one of these conditions is actually working. But we actually want to show it to the manager or the secretary about this particular error. And how do we do that? We simply just go onto this particular field right here. So we have this field over here. So we have form.errors. So if there's some errors of the status, we want to show something. Okay. So what do we do? we show, let's say we want a small text. Yeah, form dot errors dot statements. Aha. So as you can see, should choose pledge, choose pledge when participant has paid, should choose pledge when participant has paid the registration. Wait, no, sorry. That's wrong. When participant has not. I forget that. When participant has not paid the registration fee. So if we actually do set the pledge, should choose partial payments when participant has not paid the full amount. Oh, right, yeah. So if this is less than the registration fee, so oh right, yeah. So the condition over here is the first part of the condition. If it's less than the registration fee, but so this actually should be an else if. Sorry, this should do it. Should choose partial payment when participant has not paid the full amount. So the amount has not been set. So if there's no amount, that means there's nothing in there. It should have worked, right? The status is not equal to pledge. So if this is actually less than that, so this one is actually 0. Oh yeah, if it's 0, it's a problem. Okay. So the condition here is if it's more than 0, but also less than the registration fee. So if the amount is less than the registration fee, or the amount is more than 0, I think this should work, right? No. Hey, it's rather the other way around. The condition is based on these two right here. All right, so if the amount is less than the registration fee, or it's more than this one, we have to check this one. All right, so let's save that. Nothing is happening. That's my condition here is wrong. All right, I think there's it. Yeah, nice. All right, yeah, that was a 4. Okay, so the new person was Patrick Starr, and his is a pledge. There's no amount, but amount came in as a string. That's weird. That's very, very bad. Even though we set it to be a number, it still came in as a string. That's pretty bad. Okay, we need to fix those problems. And the best way to fix that is using Phonics validation schema. Right. So which validation schema are we going to use? Let's use Zod. We can use Zod to fix our validation schema. So let's first install Zod. I also went on ahead to install Zod Formic adapter since you can use Zod directly with Formic, which is unfortunate, but yeah. So we have Zod. So let's bring in Zod, import Z. Zod. That should give us that. Now we can bring in our validation schema. Zod.objects. So you can have it to be an object. And let's fix this one quickly. Validation schema. I'm hoping that will fix that. Okay, so we can say that name is Zod.string. Very, very important. We can say the age is number, the address is string, the telephone is string, another string. Let's just bring this one to email. Kind of line to keep track. I know that this is an amount, but this can also be nullable. You don't want it to be that. And we have status, the of a string. I can just set it to be a string and that should be that. Okay, so let's try it one more. Let's say Boris. I don't know, Godwin. Boris Godwin, 18, is on the streets of M67. The telephone is 5555. The email is boris@gmail.com. The amount is nothing. And we're going to set it to pledge. Yes. So we're getting an error. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Completely forgot about this important thing. Import sort adapter. We get this we have this. Sorry, the schema. No. Validation schema. There we go. And we bring this in right here. This should do it. All right. So let's try it again. Boris Godwin, 18, date of M76, 5555. Boris, gmail.com, amount of nothing, and this will be the pledge. Let's register that. Let's check our application. Yeah. So Boris was not added. So if we do set it at 0, now hit payment. So it was actually set as partial payment. Let's check Boris. It said as pledge. That's interesting. Guess might have missed something. But we need to resolve this problem. It's kind of resolved. Always the amount has to be set. Let's see if we can set a minimum amount over here. Which one? This one, guys, I've set it as 0. There we go. So if I try to clear this, it still gives me a problem. Anyway, so this one actually has to be a number, but seems to be a bit of a challenge. And also, why did it allowed it to be a pledge? Well, it's kind of true. The condition actually will allow it to pass. But this is the problem over here. All right. So if there is no amount, so if this one comes in as a 0 or an empty string, anything like that, this will actually pass. So it skips this. The pledge was set, the value was 0. Yeah, I guess 0 to can be a pledge. Yeah, 0 can be a pledge. Yeah. I guess unless we actually do set it as 1, then that cannot be a pledge because the person actually paid something. Great. Well, unless maybe there are cases where the person will put in a 10 and that's a pledge. I guess that can be allowed. Let's say the person wants to whole pledge a total of 10. Yeah, I guess we can allow that. a total of 10. They can pledge it, but that means they haven't paid, so it's a pledge. Yeah. Yeah. Let's allow that. Yeah, let's allow that. So we're going to allow any amount to be a pledge. So this condition can't go away. Now, what about this condition? And it can be partial. So if we've actually set an amount which is less than the registration fee or is more than 0, so this condition should end with 4. So if it's any of this, the status is actually 4, then should not choose for payment when participant hasn't, oopsies, let's do this, hasn't paid the full amount. All right. So this condition, so it will allow everything else, but as long as this condition holds, that if we've actually set an amount that's less than the registration fee, this condition here, we can get rid of that because it's not necessary. So if the amount that the person is paying is less than the registration fee and the status has been set to full, then that is a no. We don't allow that. All right, good. So we can actually perform a check with that. Let's say, let's give the person a name of Winston of, let's say, it's about 37, and he's from street 901. Sorry, 1. His telephone is 5547. Email of Winston at yahoo.com. Is paying an amount of 10 and they're setting as 4, and that's not allowed. So we're going to set it as partial payment or a pledge, and that actually works. Nice. Okay. Let's see if we can actually change this value over here, because we forgot to ensure some validation here. So I guess we have to be careful with this. All right. So we actually are performing some validations around the clock. Okay, so now that is done, what we also want to do, so we're actually done with everything about the form, and putting the name, the age, the address, the telephone, the email, and the amount. The next thing that we actually want to do is to be able to see the list of all participants. And how do we do that? Well, there are a couple of things that we can do. Is this page right here is for filling in the form or filling in the registering participants. We can also have a page which is going to show the list of all the participants that has been registered inside the system. And let's do that. But currently, we need to install React Router DOM to achieve that. Because right now it's a single page and we want multiple pages and not a single page. Okay, so installation is done. We've installed our React Router DOM. So next thing we need to do is a couple of changes. We first need to move all that we've done inside here to a separate file. So let's say registration form.tsx. So we're gonna grab everything here. and move it all over to the registration form. Change this from app to registration form. That's for default, and get rid of the one down here. We have the registration form. Then over here, we need to export our function as an app. Then let's say a div, and that clears things up. All we need to do is to bring in a couple of stuff. So we need to bring in our registration form. We also need some few things from React Router DOM. So what we're going to do is we are going to construct the how our routing is supposed to be. So we're going to bring in the create browser router as well as router provider. These two things are important. So what do? So first we're going to construct our router. We create browser router. It takes in an array and an object. First, we need to specify the path. So what are we doing here is we are telling at what part of the URL should we show a related component. So in this case, we have a slash. So at a slash, or in this case, home page, what do we want to show? We want to show our app, which is the first thing. When we go to this path, let's say of register, what element do we want to show? We want to show the registration form. The ones we've constructed, let me get rid of this part. This part of, so this is the first two pages. So the first page is the home page, which is this one, the index page, nothing over there. And the second page is the register. So this one would be, let's say, for example, we have HTTPS, something.com, then slash register. So once the person visits this URL, this component will show up. If they visit this URL, then this will show up. The app will show up, the app component. But we need to tie it all together. So we need to bring in our router provider and bring in our router, pass that in, then we save that. As you can see, nothing's happening now. But if we go to register, we can see our form. Beautiful. All right. That's neatly done. What we need to do is we need to bring in the pages, the participant page. So how do we do that? Let's simply create a component called participants. Or let's call it a participant page. I think that's much cleaner and much more understandable. And this one, instead of registration form, let's call it a registration page. It might contain a lot of stuff in your future. So let's change this one from registration form to registration page. Much cleaner. All right. So let's go on to our participants page. So let's go default. So we create our participants page. Return that. Let's create a div and let's say participants. Yeah. Same participants a lot make it sound very awkward. All right, so we have our participants page, and we move on to main. Then what do we do? So add participants. What do we want to see? We want to see our participants page. So when we go to the participant route, we want to actually see all the participants. Let's try that out. We go to participants and nice. We actually access all the participants. That's all Good and nice. Now we need to actually see all the registered participants that we have. So what do? First, we need to grab it from local forage dot get item. So we grab it from get item, then we have participants. Now there is one thing I want to do quality of life is instead of writing this all over the place, I want to have a simple file. So let's say I don't know, let's say a constants file, which is going to house all these constants I have all over the place. So let's say exports as participant storage key. Let's call it like that. And we're going to call it participants. Nice. So we can grab that and bring that in here. And also import that over here. But then again, all right, so get item needs to be from the participant, but we don't have this type. So let's import that type. Instead of importing it directly from this page, I'm going to create a types file, the types.ts, and then move the participant type to that file, export that, import that for this particular file. Have it nice and easy. And then we go on to this particular page and then we import that also over here. So as you can see, we have this participants. Now this one is a promise. So we have to await it. But there is a caveat here. There's a problem that we are running into. We can't use promises inside client-based components, which is in this case this one. There's not a server component, so we can't use promises. So we have to use the use effect. So what is use effect going to do for us? Simply, it's just going to run this condition for us when the component mounts, because we don't have extra dependencies over here. But I, for one, don't really like using use effect or a lot. So in place of something like this, which is fetching data from somewhere, what I most times use is React query. So let's install React query. Now, why are we using React query? Why am I using React query? In this case, is simply for me to just eliminate the use of use effect. I really don't like use effect. It's very, very tedious and sometimes very, very hard to understand in most cases. So I just try to avoid it as much as possible. But also, I'm also using the React query because it is much more efficient in handling data fetching, which in this case we are doing, even though we are fetching data from our local browser, is we are still simulating the case where we are fetching data from somewhere outside of the application. So outside of the component system, you can just use query to handle data fetching. So how do we do this? So let's import use query from React query. So use query, and it requires 2 to 3 inputs. So in the first input, we need to specify the key. In this case, I'm just going to pass in I'm just going to pass in this. I don't really care. So we pass in the participant storage key. So this is the key that's going to use to cache the data. In this case, you don't really need to cache any data because the data is coming directly from the browser. It's not from somewhere. So, but it's fine. We can just keep it like that. So, and the second, oh, sorry, not this one. The second parameter is a callback function, or a function that is used to fetch the data. In this case, we are just going to use local for each. Just grab all this and pass it in there, and that is that. So let's get rid of use effect. So as you can see, what it does is we have a key for handling to cache the data. And the second part is the function that's actually going to be fetching the data, and it can be a promise. In this case, it's a promise. So once we have that, we just simply do use query. So if that's going to be it. So we have query. Now I no longer need to use effect. It goes away. I hate it. And what we can do is now query has access to all the data and all those informations inside the data. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to, map over or look through each of the participants that has been registered and show it onto the browser. So in this case, let's say we have data.map. So as you can see, it's getting from the data. So this is a participant. So let's say a participant. Let's write that there. And let's say, let's put it into the p tag. And all we want is the participant name for now. Yes. All right. So another thing that we have to also add is we can't just use query right off the box. We need to first set up the query client provider. And to do that, we have to set it at the root of the application. In this case, we just go to main. Right over here, we need to set up our query provider. So query client provider. We have that. I also need to specify the client. So where are we getting the client? You simply just do client.new query client right here. Let me save that. So we get our queries and we can see our data is in there. So we have Thomas Edison, Mary Moore, Yellen Boyo, Register Boris Godwin, and we have Winston. So we have all these people registered into the system, which is pretty nice. As you can see, it's quite neat. We are using using React Query. It makes your code much more understandable and not bloated using use query, trying to track things and focusing on all. No. I don't really like that. All right. So with this data, we can then perform some few things. We can show this inside the table, or you can show them as a card format, any way that you want it to be. It's all up to the structure that you want it to be. But in this case, we want to show it as a table. And the table is pretty simple. So what are we going to do? So let's keep this there for now. So we want a table. And we need for the table, we have the table head. As you know, I'm not doing any styling. The styling can be done in another video. I'm just doing bringing in the logic and trying to ensure that the functionality of the application works correctly. So what we want to show for the columns. So in this case, we have the T head. So I want to say the name. Next one will be the age. The next one will be the let's just go to the types. Address. All right. So you need address. The next one is the telephone. Let's just put that in there. Got that in there. The email. We need the email and the amount. We have the amount and we need the status as well. Grab the status and the group that was assigned to each person. Awesome. So let's grab this right here. Go inside here. So let's bring in the table body and paste this in. All right. So I want change this one from p tag to t row. All right. So you have the row data and we need to give it a key. Now, why are we providing a key to this t row thing that we have over here? This is to ensure that if there's a change in the data, React is going to check if the key has changed or not. And if the key has changed, it's going to re-render just that item. So in this case, let's say maybe Godwin's name has changed. So instead of re-rendering Thomas Edison and Mary and all the other people, it's just going to re-render this one because probably Boris Godwin's ID or key has changed. So it's just going to re-render that while keeping the others as they are. So let's bring in so we have the participant ID. So that's the ID we're going to use. So let's bring in the name. The next one is the age. The next one is the address, telephone, email, was it amount, and status, and then the group ID. Nice. So we have our table in there. All right. So as you can see, we have this one, but this thing over here. So instead of the amount being just a whole number like this, we want to add the extra decimal to it too as well. So we can do that using to fixed and to, but yes, we actually do have an error. It's saying that an unexpected error, well, one of the amounts doesn't have the to fix function. Therefore, it means that the amount that was there is not a number, is probably a different data type. So how do we handle a case like this? When you're building an application and you encounter problems like this, as you can see over here, React's router is saying that you can provide an error boundary to the page. That means in this case over here, so we can provide an error boundary over here, an error element. So we can provide an error component that is going to catch these kind of errors and handle that. Or what we can do is, let's say we can perform some check over here. So let's do this for now. So we know that one of the values is not a number. So which could it be? Off the top, you can actually see that is this one. This one is the one that's causing the problem, but there could be cases where one of these might be actually a string just showing to us as a number. Okay, so what we can do is to have some check cases over here. All right, so let's write some functions over here. Right at the bottom, let's say is get amount paid. So we pass in an amount. Currently, we do not know what value is being passed in. Actually, we do know it's supposed to be a number, but because something is causing this to happen, we want to say that, okay, we do not know. So what we're going to do is if value is, if the type of value is actually a number, then what we're going to return is the value to fixed. Let's say that's 2. So apart from that, we are passing in a string or something that is not a number. Okay, if type of value is equal to a string, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return this. I'm going to return an A. Actually, I want to do this. Just return this. So if it's a number, return this condition, else nothing. We don't know. Okay. So what we're going to do is get amount paid and we pass that in. All right. So now we know that this particular amount over here is not valid. Hence, we need to get rid of it one way or another. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Do let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Like, dislike, share, or anything that is to your fancy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. God bless you.